Trial balance. Let's start how to prepare a trial balance. Trial balance as on so and so date. Heads of accounts. Here ledger folio, that is the page number on which from which I will be taking the balance from ledgers, the debit balance and the credit balance. And I know now that you cannot get it wrong, because we have learned so many entries, around 60 journal entries, and we know now what is debiting to the account, what is crediting to the account. So let's start with the first item, capital. So what balance does capital have? Capital has credit balance. So whatever amount is given, just put it on the credit side over here. Second, cash. What is cash? Cash is an asset, and asset when increases or its balance have a debit effect. We know that. So debit. Write the amount here. Bank, again debit, and asset as same as cash, which is lying in my bank. Any asset account actually needs to be debited. Any asset, a fixed asset, a current asset, tangible asset, intangible asset, whatever it is, needs to be debited. Then see, let's take example, land and building, or plant and machinery. All assets, debit them. Okay. Goodwill or patents or trademarks or copyrights, all are my assets. I need to debit them. Moving further, debtors. Debtors are also having a debit balance. Okay. Loans and advances. Important point. Loans and advances. Now, when it is written loans and advances asset, means what? I have given it to someone, it is my debit balance, because I will take it back one day. And when it is loans and advances liability, it has to be credited, balance to be written here. Creditors, over here. Purchases, now we very well know that purchases have a debit balance. So what about sales then? They will have a credit balance. Okay. All direct expenses and indirect expenses. Expenses follow the same rule of assets. They are partners. So, following the same rule. Okay. So, all direct and indirect expenses, say labor, your direct expense. Okay. Carriage inward. Freight. All your direct expenses need to be debited. All your indirect expenses, salary, there are so many of them. Salary, rent, office expenses, okay, printing and stationery, depreciation. See, these are all cash expenses. Depreciation is a non-cash expense, but then they are all expenses and they need to be debited. All incomes need to be credited. Drawings need to be debited, because ultimately what happens to the drawings, we subtract drawings from capital has a credit balance, and when I have to subtract something out of it, I have to put the balance opposite to it. So when capital is credit, drawings which I am taking out from the capital has to be debit. Okay, all incomes may, I can write an example. All incomes, discount received, commission received, rent received, whatever it is. Okay, let me talk about purchase return. Purchase return is also known as return outward. Purchase has a debit balance, so purchase return has to have a credit balance. Sales return, or return inward, see, in exams we get confused. Sales return is return inward or sales return is return outward. So remember the word SIN, sin. Sales, S, return inward, IN, in. Sales return is return inward. When sales balance has to be credited, sales return has to be debited, opposite of sales. And P, out. Purchase return has to be return outward. Okay. Bills receivable, my asset, will have debit balance. Bills payable is my liability, will have a credit balance. Bank overdraft, when I withdrew from bank more than what my bank account actually holds, it is a liability. I will have to pay it. When bank account is debited, it is an asset. Bank overdraft is a liability. Credit it. Expenses and losses, any expenses we just read, and losses also. Loss on sale of plant and machinery, loss due to fire, loss due to theft, any insurance claim we did not accept in full and therefore there was a loss. All such losses and expenses need to be debited in the trial balance. Income and gains we credit, so debit all expenses and losses. Discount allowed, cash discount of 5% so that the party makes a prompt payment to me. So it is an expense to the business. Maybe I was receiving 200 from the party, but due to allowing a discount, now I receive only 95, or say 195. So discount allowed is an expense to me, it has to be debited. Commission received, income has to be credited. See, there may be so many items, but just first find out the nature. What is the nature of that account? Is it an asset, liability, capital? It is an income or it is an expense? If it is an asset, debit it. If it is an expense, debited. If it is a loss, then also debited. Rest all. If it is in liability, credited. Capital, credited. Revenue, credited. Income, credited. If you remember these, it is very, very easy to plot a trial balance. No problem at all. Now, if you have in this table closing stock, very important point, please pay all your attention here. Okay, closing stock, will you debit it or will you credit it? I will do nothing with the closing stock, not to be entered in trial balance. Remember, not to be entered in trial balance. Why? Because what is closing stock? Stock which is unsold, purchases which are unsold. I have already written purchases in my trial balance. Now I can't do a doubling of that writing closing stock also. So closing stock need not be written in your trial balance. Once you are finished with all this writing debits and credits, thus take the total, and the total of the debit side should match the total of the credit side. Then only you can get an amount of arithmetical accuracy, that whatever posting in ledgers you have done, whatever balances you have got, from there you are putting them into the trial balance. And since debit side is equal to the credit side, and sufficient amount of arithmetical accuracy can be proven.